verbal and emotional abuse. Hold on, guys. So it says, when I was a teenager, life at home was painfully turbulent, and unfortunately I was part of the problem rather than part of the solution. I remember my mother sensibly saying to me, June, it's not what you say, it's the way you say it. Oh, how I hated to hear those words, especially since she needed to say them often. With full sarcasm, I mentally mocked the phrase, a half octave higher. It's not what you say, it's the way you say it. Then one day it clicked for me. On that day, I actually heard my disrespectful tone, and then I understood. Slowly, I admitted to myself that's true. It's not what I say, it's the way I say it. Actually, I didn't know it at the time, but I was in bondage to bitterness, and my seething anger had control onto hatred. Yet I felt oppositely justified in my hatred. The object of my hatred was clearly my father. My teenage heart could not tolerate his verbal and emotional abuse, especially toward my mother. With every harsh word, as she felt more and more the value, I felt the devasitating impact on her heart. She was Achilles' heel. She was my soft spot. Consequently, I became consumed with thinking, how can I protect her and how can I make him stop? My mindset was logical. Somebody has to let him know how wrong he is, since no one else seemed willing to step up to the plate, and I diluted that. It had to be my default. Therefore, I used my indirect tactic called if looks could heal. Of course, all I did was make matters worse, and horror of horrors, I was becoming like the one I hated. My only direct confrontation addressing his adultery resulted in a severe, painful repressation. I was sent away to boarding school for 2 months and then away to camp for the summer. Dad said, you are a bad influence on the family. Numerous times my father told me, after dinner, you are not to be with your mother. All of you children are bad for her. In truth, he was excessively jealous of anyone who could take her away from him for any length of time. Following the dinner meal, we were sent upstairs and forbidden to come back downstairs, yet at some point during the course of the evening, Mother would accuse herself with the pretense of going to the restroom. But instead, she would quickly ascend the stairs, making the rounds to all 4 of us, giving each of us a gentle kiss or a warm embrace and lightly shower us with soothing words like, everything will be all right, I love you. In the midst of her tender touches, however, I felt the heaviness of her heart and the pain of her isolation. On occasion, Mother's eyes would fill tears, and honey, I'm sorry. He doesn't mean to be this way. All we can do is trust the Lord. Years after my father's death, as we talked about those earlier years, Mom confided, there was nothing I could do, just nothing I could do. I didn't counter her because I knew she generally felt that way. But is that accurate? When someone is being verbally or emotionally abusive to you, is there anything you can do? More accurately, is there something you can do in a healthy way that leads to healing? I say yes because I learned to do it. You do have choices. You can have boundaries. You can have healing. That is what this is about. If only I had known the truth within this years ago, I would have acted in a much healthier way and been saved such much heartache. As you allow Christ to be in control of your mind, you are in your emotions. I pray that by absorbing these truths, you will have healthier relationships and be free and whole within yourself. So, verbal emotional abuse, victory over verbal and emotional abuse. You're worthless. You never amount to anything. I wish you had never been born. Words like these in childhood can wound the heart for a lifetime. And further wounding takes place in adulthood, when control is the name of the game. Threats like, if you will leave me, or hurt the children, or are taking the keys, you're not going anywhere, are both emotionally and verbally abusive in our ways of maintaining control in relationships. Abuse can also be perpetrated without a word, whether with degrading looks. Yeah, like evil looks, like people look at you so evil. I had to deal with that. Upset gestures or threatened behaviors. These actions inflict immense pain and impede emotional growth. You don't have to allow an abuser to make you feel worthless. Jesus says that God not only knows each and every sparrow, but he also knows you intimately and considers you to be of great worth. Luke chapter 12, verse 6 or 7. Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies? Yet not one of them is forgotten by God. Indeed, the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. What is emotional abuse? Emotional abuse is the unseen fallout of other forms of abuse. Physical, mental, verbal, sexual, and even spiritual abuse. People often minimize the importance of emotions. Yet with deeply wounded people, their feelings can be the driving force behind their choices, the life-sustaining element of their very beings. Emotional abuse strikes at the very core of who we are crushing our confidence, wearing away our sense of worth, crushing our spirit. The Bible says a cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. Proverbs chapter 17, verse 22. Emotional abuse is any ongoing negative behavior used to control or hurt another person. Emotional abuse ranges from consistent indifference to continually belittling of character. All forms of abuse, emotional, verbal, mental, physical, spiritual, and sexual, damage a person's sense of dignity and God's given worth. All forms of abuse wound the spirit of a person and therefore are emotionally abusive. Proverbs, the book of wisdom, says, a crushed spirit who can bear? Proverbs chapter 18, verse 14. Emotional abuse or psychological mistreatment scars the spirit of the one abused. The damage from emotional abuse lasts far longer than damage from any other kind of abuse. A broken arm will soon heal. A broken heart takes much longer. After attending periods of emotional abuse, many victims lose hope, feeling that life is not worth living. Hope deferred makes that heart sick. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 12. Emotional abuse can be passive-aggressive. Passive-aggressive abuse is a means of a direct underhanded control, hence the term is passive-aggressive. Passive-aggressive abusers express their anger through non-assertive covert behavior. In an attempt to gain covert control, they often use manipulation as means of placing themselves in a position of dependence. Then with underlying anger, they become fault finders of the people on whom they depend. Victims of passive-aggressive people feel perplexed and dismayed at being the target of punishment and manipulative behaviors. Friends of passive-aggressive abusers often become enmeshed in trying to comfort or console them in response to their claims of unjust treatment, and are inevitably to handle life on their own. Passive-aggressive abusers need to recognize and resolve their very real anger and take to heart God's warning. Do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the lap of fools. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 9. Emotional abuse can be either overt or covert rejection. Overt rejection conveys the message that a person is unwanted or unloved, as when one is belittled as a child. Covert rejection takes place in subtle ways that may or may not be intended to cause harm by the perpetrator, as when one is ignored as a child. Both overt and covert rejection. Tamir reads 2 Samuel chapter 13. Overt rejection. Tamar's daughter of King David was raped by her half-brother Amon and then was openly and blindly despised and shunned by him. Covert rejection. Their father, King David, directly rejected Tamir by failing to execute justice on her behalf when he refused to hold Amon accountable for his sin against Tamar. David in excess let his son off the hook by totally ignoring the sexual violation of his daughter. What does the Bible say about emotional abuse? The Bible doesn't use the term emotional abuse, but it does entrust us as to how we are to treat one another. The Bible details numbers of attitudes and actions we should have toward each other. If we follow these guidelines, we will never be abusive toward anyone. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain or conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourself. Each of you should not look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. Philippians chapter 2, verse 3, verse 4. Verbal abuse is a form of overt emotional abuse. A skilled wordsman wields his weapon carefully, chopping repeatedly on a precise spot until the target tree falls. This lumberjack takes pride in controlling himself, and his weapon never striking a careless blow. Likewise, a verbal abuser uses his tongue as a weapon to hack at another person. This abuser is skilled in his ability to strike a blow, wielding words that cautiously cut heart and soul. You love every harmful word, O you deceitful tongue. Proverbs chapter 52, verse 4. Verbal abuse is a systematic, ongoing use of harmful words or a sharp tone in an attempt to control or dominate another person. Abuse means mistreatment, the destructive misuse of something or someone. Verbal abuse is always destructive. Your tongue plots destruction. It is like a sharpened razor. You who practice deceit. Proverbs chapter 52, verse 2. Verbal abuse injures the feelings of others with reviling, insulting, or contemptuous words. The Hebrew word for revile is gadaph, from a root word that means cut or wound. Jesus said, "Blessed are you when people assault you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me." Matthew chapter 5, verse 11. Verbal abuse often seeks to injure the reputation of others, using tactics such as backbiting, barbs, or belittling, talking strategies such as slander, slurs, and lies. You love evil rather than good, falsehood rather than speaking the truth. Proverbs chapter 52, verse 3. What is brainwashing? Many prisoners of war have succumbed to brainwashing, an effective tactic used in psychological warfare. This term refers to a systematic, forcible indoctrination that puts pressure on prisoners to relinquish their beliefs and accept opposing beliefs. Unfortunately, you don't have to be in a prisoner of war camp to be brainwashed. Your captor could be a significant member of your own family or a new set of acquaintances. In whatever circumstance brainwashing occurs, the damage can be devastating, systematically wearing away your sense of self-worth and confidence, causing you to distrust yourself and even to lose touch with reality. Those people are zealous to win you over, but for no good. What they want is to alienate you from us, so that you may be zealous for them. Galatians chapter 4, verse 17. Tactics employed by those who brainwash others. Verbal brainwashing. Intimidation, applying that you're a failure to comply with all demands or to adopt all the abuser's attitudes or beliefs will result in severe consequences. Indoctrination, repeatedly implanting messages contrary to your presently held values or beliefs. Discrediting, belittling your outside family and friends who disagree with the abuser. Degrading, engaging in name-calling, assaults, ridicule, and humiliation. Labeling, claiming that your thoughts are childish, stupid, or crazy. They do not speak peacefully, but devise false accusations against those who live quietly in the land. Psalm chapter 35, verse 20. Emotional brainwashing. Isolation, depriving you of all outside sources of emotional and social support. Induced exhaustion, keeping you up late, interrupting your sleep, causing sleep deprivation, wearing you down physically or emotionally. Yup. Excessive compliance, multi-enforcing tribal demands, ignoring, withdrawing emotional support but later denying the withdrawal, forgetting, intentionally failing to keep promises and agreements, exploiting, using you or someone close to you for selfish interest or gain. The enemy pursues me, he crushes me to the ground, he makes me dwell in darkness like those long dead. So my spirit grows faint within me, my heart within me is dismayed. Psalm chapter 143, verse 3, verse 4. Characteristics of verbal and emotional abuse. Words possess immense power. Through a word, God created the world. Through the Word who was made flesh, John chapter 1, verse 14, God saved the world. Words can be life-giving as well as life-threatening. Life-given by inspiring us to be all we were meant to be, and life-threatened by destroying our hopes and dashing our dreams. Automatically, words move from being positive to being abusive. When they hurt our hearts and harm our relationships, the Bible says, the tongue has the power of life and death. Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21. Are your words grievous or gracious? Words have the ability to build up others or to tear others down. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Words that hurt, attacking a person's identity. You're inherently wrong. You're intrinsically bad. Yelling, shut up, you look awful. Naming, calling, calling you're a stupid idiot, you're a crazy fool, assaulting, you're worthless, you're disgusting, a negative picture of the past. I wish you were never born. I should have had an abortion. That's what my grandma said to me. It was like, people like you shouldn't even be born. Because I got some type of like disabilities, autism and stuff. A negative picture of the present. You can't do anything right. Yep, that one too. Get lost. A negative picture of the future. You'll never amount to anything. You're hopeless. Addressing a person's actions. Words that heal. You did something wrong. You did something bad. Discussing, please listen, we need to talk about blank. Let's talk about that might be more appropriate for you to wear. Casting a vision, you're good at blank. You have positive qualities. Conflict in your life has tremendous value. I can see areas where you have much appeal. This is words that heal. A positive picture of the past. I was glad that the day you were born, I knew God had a special purpose for you when you were born. A positive picture of the present. You do a lot of things right, and you're always have a home in my heart. A positive picture of the future. God has a wonderful plan for your life, and God has a future filled with hope for you. What are familiar faces of abuse? Abuse wears many faces. Faces as varied as the people who give it and receive it. Abuse can substitute or blunt, quiet, or loud, smooth, or abrasive. But with all its differences, abuse is always either verbal or nonverbal in delivery, and it's always deeply impacts your personal and social life. His speech is smooth as butter, yet words in his heart. His words are more soothing than oil, yet they are also drawn swords. Psalm chapter 55, verse 21. Verbal abuse is accusing, advising, excessively backbiting, badgering, bashing because of gender, race, or religion, belittling, betraying confidence, blaming, shifting, brainwashing, breaking promises, bullying, complaining chronically about unjust treatment, controlling conversations, criticizing unjustly, and degrading. And disagreeing with religions is not verbal abuse. Or having a belief about something that is false, saying I believe your beliefs is false because I stick to my convictions as Jesus is the only way to salvation. But calling the people in other religions names and bad things is not good. Early. Demanding false confessions, demanding that unrealistic expectations be met, demeaning family members, denying that abuse ever occurred, denying that abuse is wrong, destroying credibility, dictating orders, disgracing, gossiping, humiliating, publicly assaulting, interrupting constantly, laughing at abusive behavior, lying or truth-trusting, making fun of a person's fear, making negative comparisons to others, and making racial slurs, minimizing that what is wrong, mocking, name-calling, playing verbal mind games, and reality switching and ridiculing, scapegoating, shame publicly, slandering, speaking profanity, teasing publicly about sensitive areas, and teasing that hurts the heart, and terrorizing, threatening suicide in order to control, twisting scripture and undermining other relationships, using coarse talk and using put downs, Using words as a way to deceive, violate in the context of conversations. Wounding with sarcasm and yelling and screaming. Nonverbal abuses, abandoning the family, abusing mentality, abusing spirituality, acting deceptively, acting overly suspicious, arriving late as a form of control, assaulting a person physically and being chronically irresponsible, being excessively jealous and betraying family, friends, and coworkers, brandishing weapons and changing rules or expectations continually, committing adultery and damaging property, driving recklessly and amazing company money, including others from the group, failing to validate feelings, favoring others, forcing an abortion, forcing sex or sexual perversion, giving consolating looks, giving excessive gifts to men apart, giving sneering looks, giving unsolicited help to men apart and hanging up the phone on someone, hiding things, car, house, keys, money, jewelry, and important documents, and ignoring, interfering with another's work, interrupting another's sleep, intimidating physical, invading another's personal space, and isolating from family, and killing another's pet, making assaulting gestures, and making unwanted visits, men apart and children, and monitoring another's phone calls, opening another person's mouth, and over-strategizing, over-dodging in order to control and playing cruel tricks, prohibiting another's decision-making and prohibiting the positive friendships of others, prohibiting the private conversation of others, raping, refusing to leave when asked, refusing to listen, refusing to validate another's feelings, rejecting one's own child, and slamming doors and drawers, stalking, stealing, stalking, power and pity parties, threatening gestures, walking away as a power play, and withdrawing emotionally, withholding deserved competence, withholding deserved credit, and withholding finances. What characterizes classic passive aggressive behavior? Passive aggressive behavior is a form of covert control, overt abuse such as a physical bashing, verbal raging, or name calling is easy to identify, but covert abuse like shunning, slighting, and ignoring can be much more difficult to detect, though it is just as emotionally abusive. Passive aggressive people express anger indirectly and seek to make their points in evasive, underhanded, or deceitful ways. While some people are unaware that they engage in such hurtful behavior patterns, others are quite intentional in their actions. The Bible makes it clear that no one who practices deceit will dwell in my house. No one who speaks falsely will stand in my presence. Psalms chapter 107, verse 7. Tactics used in this type of emotional abuse may include the following. Invalidating. I never said that. Your recall is wrong. I don't know what you're talking about. Minimalizing. You're just too sensitive. You're exaggerating. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Countering. You couldn't possibly feel that way. You got it all wrong and you don't know what you're talking about. Trivializing. If you had really studied for the test, you could have made 100 instead of a 98. Your efforts really fell short and you're giving yourself too much credit. Methods of sabotage to gain covert control and personal power. The passive emotional abusive person will use some of the following methods here. Fostering chaos, controlling others by intentionally leaving work and projects incomplete. Telling lies or half-truths, controlling others with unjustified excuses for not fulfilling commitments. Procrastinating, controlling others by intentionally missing deadlines, thus displaying no regard for the negative impact on others. Being chronically late, controlling others by keeping people waiting. Being ambitious, controlling others by sending mixed messages, leaving others in a wake-up confusion about what was said or what was meant. Instructing, controlling others by offering unsolicited advice on a continual basis. Being passively indifferent, controlling others by giving the impression that their concerns are heard and important, but then disgrading them. Protecting and helping, controlling others by attending help with the intention of causing a sense of indebtedness. Being a quick change artist, controlling others by changing the subject and diverting attention from conversations that feel personally threatened. Withholding information, controlling others by failing to give deserved compliments and deserved credit. Crossing boundaries, controlling others by taking advantage of those with little or no personal boundaries. When Saul's men were sent to watch David's house and to kill him, David prayed, for the sins of their mouths, for the words of their lips, let them be caught in their pride. Psalm chapter 51, verse 12. What examples are emotional abuse, rejection? Rejection is common to all of us. We have been unjustly rejected by a perceptive employer, not chosen by a team, captured and joked by a suitor, or ignored by an acquaintance. Yet while we may have had our feelings hurt or our egos wounded, it didn't last long and left no permanent scars. However, some types of rejection can cut like a knife and pierce like an arrow to the heart. Not a word from their mouth can be trusted. Their heart is filled with destruction. Their throat is an open grave with their tongue, and they speak deceit. Psalm chapter 5, verse 9. Examples of overt abusive rejection: the parent who deserts the family, the parent who tells a child, I wish you had never been born, the parent who tells a child, you are a disgrace to the family, the parent who tells a child, you're just like your sorry father, the parent who tells a child, I wish you were like your brother, the parent who tells a child, you will never amount to anything, and the parent who tells a child, you were a mistake, you were an accident, and you were the wrong gender. Examples of covert abuse, rejection: the parent who constantly raises the bar with excessive requirements, the parent who demands more than the child is capable of giving, and the parent who withholds love, the parent who overindulges, and the parent who overprotects, the parent who divorces, the parent who commits suicide. What is the cost of being constantly abused? There is always a price to be paid for pain and loss to be incurred by the representative of abusive words and hurtful gestures. The cost is often unseen and unattentive inner deprivation that can continue to damage the soul for a lifetime. The tongue that brings healing is a tree of life. but a deceitful tongue crushes the spirit. Proverbs chapter 15, verse 4. Loss of self-worth, loss of self-confidence, and loss of faith, and loss of happiness, loss of freedom, and loss of inner peace, and loss of self-assurance, loss of security, loss of trust, loss of sexual identity, loss of clear conscience, and loss of friendship, loss of self-perception, and loss of safety, loss of self-respect, and loss of optimism, loss of pride, and loss of hope, increased self-doubt, increased self-consciousness, increased fear, increased emotional flatness, increased resilience, increased peace at all cost behavior, and increased anxiety, increased desire to escape, and increased distress, increased sexual confusion, increased guilt of shame, increased isolation, increased self-criticism, increased insecurity, increased self-destruction, increased pessimism, and increased self-hatred, and increased despair. Are your relationships healthy or unhealthy? Are you in an abusive relationship? Have you experienced an unhealthy dynamic between you and someone close to you? Many people fail to recognize that they are in an abusive relationship because abuse has been their normal for so long. If you look closely, you can evaluate the health of any relationship by seeing the type of fruit it produces. Whether the fruit is good or bad, Jesus said, a good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus by their fruit you will recognize them. Matthew chapter 7, verse 18, verse 20. So this is a fruit test. If you keep on biting and devouring each other, watch out or you will be destroyed by each other. The acts of the sinful nature are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, and debauchery, adultery and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of anger, rage, selfish ambitions, and dissolutions and factions. Galatians chapter 5, verse 15, verse 19, verse 20. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Galatians chapter 5, verse 22, verse 23. Causes of abuse. How can he be so cruel? How can she be so insensitive? Why would he talk that way? These are real questions that victims of abusers may wonder or ask. Understanding the real answers can give you wisdom and discernment regarding your relationships. Psalms 51 verse 6. Surely you desire truth in the inner parts. You teach me wisdom in the inmost place. What does breeding grounds brings from abusers? Has someone implied that you are abusive? If so, and what has been said has a kernel of truth to it? Do you want to change in order to heal from the wounds of the past? You need to face the fact that your past was painful. Then acknowledge and seek to understand the painful impact those wounds have had on your relationships, both past and present. At this point, you can courageously choose to face the areas in your life that need healing, or you can refuse to do so and remain a victim of your past and continue to take others a victim of your past as well. Jeremiah chapter 17 verse 14 says, Heal me, O Lord, and I will be healed. Save me, and I will be saved, for you are the one I praise. Evaluate your childhood. What were your relationships like during your preschool years, during your years in school, during your adolescence? What feelings do you remember? Were you usually sad, glad, mad, scared? The list below may help you to remember. I experienced some of type of abuse by one or both of my parents. I experienced sexual abuse. I experienced verbal abuse, emotional abuse. I've been beating, severity, beating. I mean, beating till I'm bloody, till my head was gushing out blood one time. And then I was pushed down the steps by my grandmother. I was called brutal names. It's horrible. Yeah, I was belittled in school, how do you call it? Bullied? Yeah. I felt belittled or bullied by my schoolmates. I stuffed my emotions. I learned my parents' ways of maintaining control, and I didn't have a safe place to express my feelings. I thought that my normal was normal, but it wasn't. I never dealt with my underlying feelings of anger, and I never developed sensitivity to the feelings of others. The childhood feelings of abusers. As children, abusers usually felt singled out, and they felt that they were different in several of these areas. Too short or too tall, too fat or too thin. Too dark or too light skin color, and physical features: too large nose or ears and feet. Physical features on the one in freckles, acne, buck teeth, hair color. Athletically challenged, awkward, or uncoordinated. Academically challenged, mentally slow. AD or ADHD. Physically challenged, disabilities, poor eyesight, hearing problems, or speech difficulties. Which of you by word can add 1 cubit to his statue? Matthew chapter 6 verse 27. Why do some inflict abuse while others either receive or reject abuse? All children are impacted by abusive treatment, and some take the path of succumbing to abuse and defining themselves by the negativity of that abuse. Others take the path of rising above abuse and defining themselves by positive character building values. Psalm chapter 17, verse 4, verse 5. As for the deeds of men, by the word of your lips, I have kept myself from the ways of the violent. My steps have held to your paths My feet have not slipped. Many people wonder why I have to travel down this path of abuse. You may not know the exact answer for some time, but you can know that as long as you continue to entrust your life to the Lord, He will direct your paths each step of the way, and you can be an overcomer. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. John chapter 16, verse 33. Number one, the path of victims. Children internalize abusive experiences. Children blame themselves for the abuse, and children feel deserving of abuse. Children seek out abusers who look strong, and children remain victims of abusers. Number two, children. The path of abusers. Children internalize abusive experiences, and children blame others for the abuse. Children feel that others are deserving of abuse. Children seek out the weak in order to look strong, and children become abusers. Number three, children intently internalize their abusive experience, but later internalize them. Children utterly blame themselves or others for the abuse, but later forgive all involved in the abuse, including themselves. Children intently feeling deserving of abuse, but later feel deserving of loving and trusting relationships. Children entities seeking abusers or victims, but later seek out well and trusted people. Children inevitably remain victims or becoming abusers, but later reject both roles and become emotionally healthy. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 or 6. Heal me, O Lord, and I will be healed. Save me, and I will be saved, for you are the one I praise. Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 14. Why do people who are being abused continue to stay in abusive relationships? Answer: one major reason is fear. Isaiah chapter 21, verse 4 says, "My heart, Father's fear makes me tremble." Instilling fear is a powerful weapon used to control another person. One effective strategy that instills fear is the use of demeaning messages such as verbal threats to inflict physical harm. Another fear tactic is to leave or to withdraw emotional support. The basic underlying fear, however, is the fear of not having the three basic needs met: the needs for love, significance, and security. Yet the Lord wants us to turn from fear to faith and to trust Him to meet our deepest needs. Fear of man will be proved to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. Proverbs chapter 29, verse 25. What is the root cause of abusive relationships? Healthy relationships are those in which the people involved have a clearly defined sense of their own identities without a clear understanding of who we are and of the worth God has given us. It is hard to maintain functional, ongoing relationships that enrich everyone involved. A relationship will not always be smooth, but it can be provide a safe, trusting environment in order to environment in which there is no fear of intimacy, and each person knows how to communicate personal needs and desires to the order. Unhealthy relationships generally reflect an inability to understand and work within appropriate boundaries, since unhealthy boundaries are almost always the result of being raised in some variation of a dysfunctional family. The likelihood that children raised in such families will grow up healthy boundaries is limited. The pain from not having their God given needs for love, significance, and security met in childhood carries over in each subsequent relationship in which they expect or insist that these needs may be met. At my very core, I am a bad person. Therefore, bad things should happen to me. If I would just be a better person, people would treat me better. I don't have a choice about being mistreated. I must be doing something wrong or I wouldn't be treated this way. If I trust harder, try harder to do what is expected, I can make things better. If I can't, maybe I deserve to be unhappy. It's a wrong belief. The right belief of victims. I realize that I have been living in a lie, believing that I am to blame for being mistreated, and believing my happiness will come from a human relationship. I have a choice about being around anyone who mistreats me. I don't want to have a false loyalty to anyone who abuses me, nor do I want to have the false expectation that if I can just change, the abuse will stop. I will no longer live for the approval of others, but rely on the Lord to meet my inner needs, because my value and worth come from Him, and He loves me unconditionally. Only the Lord can meet all my needs. Galatians chapter 1 verse 10. Am I now trying to win the approval of men or of God, or am I trying to please men? If I were still trying to please men, I would not be a servant of Christ. Wrong belief of abusers. I am not responsible for the way I treat others. They are to blame. If people wouldn't make me mad, I wouldn't treat them badly, and they are the ones who should change, not me. There's nothing wrong with me. People just need to accept me the way I am. And here's the right belief of abusers. I realize I am responsible for the way I responded to others, and no one deserves to be mistreated. No matter how people act toward me, how I act toward them is my choice. God has given me the power through His Holy Spirit within me to treat everyone with love and respect. I do not need to try to control people because God is in control, and He is the only one who can meet my deepest needs. 2 Peter chapter 1 verse 3 verse 4. His divine power has given us everything we need for life and godliness through our knowledge of Him who called us to His own glory and goodness. Through these He has given us His very great and precious promises, so that through them you may participate in the divine nature and escape the corruption in the world caused by evil desires. Question: how can I overcome the damage that I suffered in my past history? Why do I keep repeating the same unhealthy relational patterns, and how can I change these harmful behaviors? Answer: God often allows difficulties in life to wake us up, to our need to understand our personal attitudes and actions. And then with that understanding, we can take responsibility for them. You will be drawn to the same relational dynamics over and over until you overcome the past by allowing God to train you and to produce a harvest of peace and righteousness in you. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 10 or 11. Our fathers disciplined us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good, that we may share in his holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. So I'm going to read the rest. I don't know if I should read this one. So I'm going to read the rest a little later.